In Spain, Manel and his wife Julia are driving home when she brings up the topic of having children. Manel hasn't made up his mind, and Julia needs an answer to plan the future. An argument ensues, and they get distracted. Julia swerves to avoid an oncoming vehicle, but their car ends up in the middle of the road and is struck by a truck, sending it rolling. A year later, widower Manel lives alone with his cat. On TV, reporters discuss the possibility of closing borders due to a strange virus. Prevention measures aren't working, and people are growing violent at the borders. Manel, deeply depressed, barely pays attention and eventually mutes the TV. He misses footage showing a patient turning into a zombie. Manel later takes a ride and notices an ambulance passing by. Graffiti on walls reads, "The end is coming." He arrives at the harbor to meet two women interested in buying his boat, which he hasn't used since his wife's death. While looking for the boat's papers, Manel finds Julia's bracelet and memories flood back. On his way home, Manel ignores a call from his sister, then stops at the supermarket, noticing people hoarding food and emptying the shelves. Later at home, he ties the bracelet around the cat's neck, while hearing on TV that the virus has spread to Spain. In the evening, Manel video calls his sister Belen, who shares big news. Her family is being transferred to the Canary Islands, and she invites him to join. Manel refuses. The next day, Manel notices all his neighbors leaving, so he decides to do the same, bringing his cat along. As he drives, he hears on the radio that a new variant of the virus is spreading through Europe. This variant shortens the incubation period to just minutes and is transmitted through wounds and bites. At the airport, Manel sends Belen a message saying he'll join her after all. As people try to board, tickets are denied with no explanation, and the crowd grows agitated, yelling at a confused employee. The big screen then announces all flights are canceled and everyone receives a civil security alert. Panic spreads and some attempt to board anyway. Manel gets a call from Belen, urging him to hide at home and wait for more news. At that moment, a man steals a gun from security and threatens to open fire, causing chaos as the crowd rushes to leave. Manel gets stuck in traffic and the radio reports that all roads and bridges are similarly blocked. Military helicopters fly overhead and people begin leaving their cars, arguing with other drivers. The news reports that military personnel have been evacuated and soldiers have been injured in riots. Eventually, many drivers abandon their cars and leave on foot. Manel grabs his cat and follows suit. By nightfall, he arrives at his neighborhood, where he sees soldiers surrounding a building and setting up a tunnel to remove a zombie. Manel is shocked when two soldiers bring the zombie out, realizing he knows the infected man. Afterward, Manel heads home, falls asleep, and dreams of Julia's death. The next morning, Belen video calls again and informs Manel that they're organizing safe zones. However, the military is divided, fearing the virus will spread further, as other countries have struggled with similar efforts. She advises Manel to stay home. Soon, cities declare quarantine, and riots escalate. The virus spreads uncontrollably, and people begin filming zombies attacking others in their neighborhoods. Others share tips on how to build armor and defend themselves. In response, the government announced a state of emergency, enforcing new restrictions. All commercial activity must cease after 2 p.m., and the population may be militarized. When Manel next visits the supermarket, he finds almost no food left and people are stealing from one another. Manel grabs what he can, and as he leaves, he sees fighter jets flying by. He stops at a gas station for more supplies, where a wounded cop appears. After bumping into Manel, the cop locks himself inside the station's store, using his handcuffs to secure the doors. More people arrive, running and crying for help. Suddenly, a zombie attacks another officer, biting his face. Manel grabs a mop to defend himself, but the fallen officer shoots the zombie, causing its blood to splatter on Manel. Inside the store, the first cop begins to transform. Manel tries to check on the fallen officer, but the cop shoots at the floor to keep him at bay. After Manel leaves with his supplies, the cop takes his own life. Later that day, the president announced an extended lockdown, warning of criminal consequences for those who refuse to cooperate with the military. Manel follows online tutorials to reinforce his house, adding security cameras. That evening, soldiers arrive to evacuate the neighborhood, but Belen messages him to stay hidden and assures him she'll rescue him soon. Manel turns off the lights and hides with his cat, and thankfully, the soldiers leave without discovering him. 2 weeks later, Manel's food was running low and he could no longer contact Belen. After hesitating, he grabs self-defense tools, covers himself in layers of clothing, and leaves his home. He breaks into several houses but finds no food. Finally, he enters a house where he meets Gabriela, an elderly woman unable to evacuate due to her wheelchair. Though she has no food, she directs Manel to the houses of neighbors who have stocked up. Following her list, Manel finds food and other supplies, including a bike. The bike allows him to travel farther, and he returns with more food, sharing it with Gabriela. He gives her a walkie-talkie so they can communicate while he's out. There's only one house left to visit, the one where the soldiers found a zombie. Manel finds no food, but does discover a tank with dead fish. Suddenly, he senses someone behind him and fires, thinking it's a zombie. It turns out to be a human, who runs away, thinking Manel is hostile. Before leaving, Manel checks one final cupboard and finds more food. Days pass and Manel and Gabriella often dine together. One night, after getting drunk, Manel messages Gabriella, regretting not spending more time with his family. He dreams of the accident again and how they were airlifted to the hospital. Gabriella suddenly calls over the walkie-talkie, telling him to turn on the radio. Manel does, hearing a voice announce that survivors are being sent to the Canaries, with coordinates for people to join the rescue group. Gabriella is skeptical, but Manel insists they're running out of food. The group is located at the Arusa estuary, and Manel believes they could reach it using his boat. Gabriella refuses, claiming she'd be a burden. Manel refuses to listen and promises to take care of Gabriella. The next morning, worried when she doesn't answer his calls, Manel checks on her and finds she has taken her own life. She left a note thanking him and urging him to save himself. On his way back, Manel is attacked by a zombie. After a struggle, he kicks it off, but it grabs his leg, biting his arm. Thankfully, the bite doesn't pierce his skin, though blood splatters on his face. Manel beats the zombie with a car door, killing it, then takes its ID and places it on its chest. Back home, Manel cleans his weapon, sends Belen a message saying he can't wait for her anymore, and leaves with his cat on the bike. After encountering a barrier, he heads into the forest, chased by zombies. At an abandoned camp, a horde of zombies emerges and Manel narrowly escapes, dodging them and avoiding obstacles. He falls off his bike after encountering a pile of bodies but continues on foot. Manel runs through the forest with zombies close behind. He reaches the harbor, crosses a bridge and locks the gate, but the zombies break through. He finds an abandoned boat in the water but can't start it. After discovering a zombie baby inside, he and his cat leave on a raft. The raft stops and Manel discovers a body stuck in the engine. He waves for help when a boat with Ukrainian men approaches and they take him aboard. On the ship, Manel learns the Canaries are quarantined and survivors are denied entry. Manel is given a room and promises to help search for supplies. He hears voices during the night and spots survivors on a boat asking for help. The next day, Manel asks Victor about them, but Victor denies anyone came. Manel is called to the captain's office to help find buildings on the map, then discovers the crew has the survivors' possessions. He asks Victor about it, but Victor refuses to answer. Manel mentions knowing where to find a helicopter, but Victor warns him to stop asking questions. Later, Manel notices the ship is carrying all the boats the crew took from survivors. He gathers his things and hides his cat in his bag to sneak around the ship. In a room downstairs, he finds two survivors tied up. Manel quickly frees the first man, but as soon as he gets up, a guard shoots him down. At that moment, Victor also arrives and tries to disarm the guard, so they fight over the gun and accidentally shoot it, damaging the things around them. Then the men start punching each other, and Victor manages to grab a rope to choke the guard to death. Now Victor wants to escape too, and agrees to find the helicopter. Manel, Victor, and the other survivor carefully sneak around until they make it to a boat. When they're about to leave, two guards open fire, killing the survivor. As the boat takes off, Victor fires back at them, only to get wounded on his shoulder. Manel makes the boat go fast enough to escape before they can get killed. Moments later, they make it to the shore and Manel helps Victor. They find a bunch of cars and a zombie stuck inside a vehicle, which Manel quickly kills. Afterward, both men and the cat left in a car to find the hospital where Julia died, because Manel remembered the helicopter. During the trip, Victor explains the ship's captain was a monster who was building a refuge on an island. He only allowed those who served him to live there, so all the women and kids were taken for his pleasure. When they finally make it to the hospital, Manel is devastated to notice the helicopter is not on the roof. Suddenly, a zombie jumps on top of the car, so Manel starts driving like crazy to throw him off. Then he uses Victor's gun to kill it, and the noise attracts even more zombies, which Manel quickly shoots down as well. Afterward, the men and the cat enter the hospital, and Manel searches for a tool he can use to remove the bullet from Victor's shoulder. At that moment, he hears some voices coming from the first floor, so Manel goes upstairs. He sees a zombie walking by and hides before he can be seen. Then he hears the voices coming from the vents, so he talks to them until another zombie appears behind him. Manel quickly pushes him off and shoots him down, only for more zombies to burst through the doors. He immediately runs back to the initial room and makes sure to lock the doors behind him to stop the zombies. To Manel's surprise, Victor and the cat aren't where he left them. When he turns around, a chute opens, and Lucia tells him to join her. The duo closes the chute and escapes right before the zombies break down the other doors. Manel is taken to an infirmary where Nurse Lucia and Sister Cecilia have Victor, the cat, and 3 children. The women take care of Victor's wound and stabilize him. When Manel mentions the helicopter, Lucia reveals it's parked behind the hospital in the quarantine area, which is full of zombies. That night, the group shares the little food they have with Manel, who keeps thinking about his wife. He goes to the room where she died and remembers their last minutes together. He also takes the bracelet from the cat and ties it to Julia's bed. The next morning, Manel goes to the roof to watch the zombies, and suddenly his phone gets a signal, so he receives all the messages Belen sent him the past few weeks. While Manel records an answer, he hears shooting and looks out to discover the ship crew is killing zombies to enter the hospital. Manel rushes to warn the group about the incoming danger, so they decide to try to use the hospital basement to reach the helicopter. The basement is full of bodies and smoke, so everyone has to cover their mouths and noses as they move. Unfortunately, the door is stuck, and they have to hit it with an axe to open it. A zombie comes out and tackles Cecilia to bite her. Manel pulls him away and burns his face against a hot pipe before Lucia kills him with the axe. Now Cecilia is infected, so she tells them to go on without her and leaves. The group reaches a corridor and finds zombies behind furniture. Lucia quietly opens the door, but a child speaks when she sees her mother among the zombies. Thankfully, they aren't heard and proceed to the door, but a zombie suddenly knocks over shelves, alerting the others. Manel hides with the child inside a cabinet while the others take cover behind a door. The zombies pound on the cabinet, and for a moment, it seems like it's over. However, the ship crew arrives and quickly kills all the zombies, leaving after a brief argument, unaware of the group's presence. The group reaches the final door and sees zombies outside. Remembering an online tutorial, Manel ties cages together to use as a shield to cross the yard. It works at first, but when a wheel gets stuck, the noise attracts more zombies. Lucia uses an axe and Manel a fire extinguisher to keep them at bay, while Victor pushes the cages. Slowly but steadily, they reach the gate. Lucia breaks the chain with her axe and stays behind with Manel, while Victor runs with the children to the helicopter. After some effort, Manel and Lucia manage to lock the gate with a scarf and join the others. Victor struggles to start the helicopter and the zombies start climbing over the fence. Manel steps out to fight them. Meanwhile, Victor reconnects an unplugged cable, finally getting the helicopter to work. The crew arrives, shooting down zombies, then cuts the scarf to open the gate, threatening the group if they don't cooperate. Victor nods at Manel, who opens a second gate. The zombies swarm the crew, biting them, and Victor makes the helicopter hover to push the zombies away. Manel fights through the horde, killing zombies with an axe. The helicopter is ready to leave, and Lucia throws down a ladder. Manel climbs it to reunite with his new friends and cat. Hours later, the helicopter approaches the Canaries, but Manel receives a call from Belen, telling him not to come. 2 fighter jets fly by, confirming that the islands are also infected. The movie ends here. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel, and see you guys in the next video.